Today what we're going to do is start our first lesson in Corona, and as with all programming languages, the first program we're going to make is going to be the Hello World program. So I'll assume that you've already got Corona installed and working on your computer, and that you also have the Outlaw IDE or text editor where you're going to be typing your code. So we're going to start with launching Corona. You will notice that two separate windows show up. So this window and this thing, which is sometimes called the simulator out or the terminal. So we're going to keep both of them up, but we're going to bring this one to the front. We're going to start by going to New Project. There's samples and other documentation and tutorials that you can look at, but we're going to start here. We're always going to place our files on the desktop so that we know exactly where they are, and we're going to call this one Lesson 1. What this will do is actually create a folder on your desktop with a whole bunch of files. So each program you make is going to be a folder unto itself with a whole bunch of files in it. We're not going to be using the phone, we're going to be using the tablet or the iPad, and we're going to move it sideways because that's the orientation we want. So we're going to say OK, and several things happened. So first of all, this little window popped up, and you'll notice on your desktop there is now a folder called Lesson 1, and there's 3 files in it. So for now we're just going to leave that there. Next thing that happened is the other window turned into this thing, which is now an iPad. If you didn't get an iPad, you can go to View and you can zoom in and out to make it bigger or smaller. And View As, you can pick whichever type of display or device you want. So we're just going to stick with iPad, not Retina display iPad. So we're going to move that over to the side. Next thing we're going to do is open up Outlaw. And you'll notice, because we're using the light or free version, 2 windows pop up in this window in the background. You just click Use Light Version and it will come up. Each time you start Outlaw, this little tutorial will pop up, so you can just close that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get that little window back that had our folders in it. And we're going to go to the desktop and find it. And we're just going to click and drag that over to My Projects. And you'll notice that Lesson 1 shows up. So we just installed all those files into Outlaw. You can expand them and you can see that the 3 files are right there. Once again, we are going to focus on this one, main.lua, to begin with. So we're just going to double click and you will see that it shows up there. This is where we're going to be actually typing our code. To begin with, the first thing you need to understand is that 2 dashes normally means a comment in Lua. So we're going to take this and we're going to replace it with something different, just so that we're consistent and we know exactly what we're doing. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put 2 dashes and then the name of the program that we're creating. We're going to put a space, and then we're going to put what's called a comment header, just so that people know who made the program, when, what's it for, and what does it do. So we're going to start by created by, and you put the person, your name, whoever created the program. Next thing we put is created on, so that you know when the program was actually made. We are going to put created for, and you put the course code, just because some people take several courses with me. And the last comment just tells you what this program does. And because this is the Hello World program, that's what this program is going to display. So comments are not used by the computer to actually make the program. They're just for humans to look at, and the compiler actually just throws them away. So we're going to place our code under here, and since we're doing the Hello World program, what we want is the computer to print out Hello World. So there's actually a command called print, and you put it in brackets, and then because we're putting a piece of text, you put it inside quotes, and you say hello world. So all we're telling the computer is when you get to this line of code, print the string hello world. Whenever you're done making changes, you should always go File, Save, because if you don't save the changes, this file hasn't actually changed from what it was before. So we're just going to minimize that. Make sure that you have the output window visible, because this is where it's going to show up to begin with. And if you go back to the simulator and go File, Relaunch, you'll notice that there's the words that we told it to print out, hello world, which is really good. Except the only problem is nothing actually showed up on our iPad. So what happened is this is the console or output window, and when you use the print command, it sends whatever is there to the output window. That's for debugging purposes. It has nothing to do with the program, and the user will never see that. But this is going to become really helpful later on when you're trying to debug your program and trying to figure out what is happening at a certain point. You can use the print statement to print things out. To get something to actually show up over here on our iPad, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable, and we're going to actually display something on the screen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the keyword local, which makes sure that our variable is just a local variable and not a global, so that it's not taking up space all the time. Next thing you do is you give your variable a name. So ours is just going to be called text object. Then what's going to happen is we're going to take our text object, and you will notice the nice thing about using Outlaw is that it has IntelliSense, and it remembered this variable, and it's giving you a hint so that you can actually spell it correctly. And you don't even have to type it all. I just hit the tab key and it filled in the word for me. So always use that because you don't want to make a spelling mistake. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to assign that variable something. And what we're going to do is there's a command called display dot new text. This variable has several parameters. You can see the string, or what we want to show up, where it's positioned on the screen from the left and from the top, the font that is using, and the size. This is an optional parameter, and we're not going to use that right now. So the string that we're going to use is, once again, hello world, and the position where this is going to be, I'm just going to place it at 500 and 500. The font, oddly enough, I'm just going to put nil, which means just use the standard system font, because the fonts that we actually have on our computer are not necessarily the same fonts that are available on the iPad. So we're just going to say use whatever available system font happens to be on the iPad, the default one. And the last is the size in points. So I'm going to make this 50 points large. So if we go back to our iPad and we go make sure that we have the console window open as well, and we run or relaunch, you'll notice that it says hello world there, but once again it doesn't say anything here. And the reason it doesn't say anything there is we changed this file, but we did not save it. So make sure that you always save after you type in a chunk of code. So now we're going to go File and relaunch again, and there's our hello world actually showing up on the iPad screen. Now there's several other options you can do with this, and one of them is changing the color. It's nice that it's white on a background, black background, but maybe we want the background of the iPad to change and we want the font color to change. So we can go back and do that. The first thing that we're going to do is change the text color. So if you go text object, once again press the tab key, and this time colon set text color. Notice it's spelled like an American, not like a Canadian. And as we've discussed in class, to set a color you actually use 3 different numbers, and they stand for red, green, and blue, or RGB. So we're going to set ours to 255 0 0, which means pure red with no green and no blue. So once again you can go File, Save, going to make my font a little bigger. I'm going to make it 75. Save it again. And then go back and relaunch. And you'll notice that it actually turned red. So that's all we're going to do today.